I'm Sam Rise. I use they and them pronouns, so thanks for believing me when I tell you who I am. And I'm a collaborator, a creative contributor to Rosine 2.0. We can constellate, I think is the word I'm thinking of. There's a beautiful kind of belonging that we have with ourselves. When we celebrate ourselves or we trust ourselves, our own contributions and our own creativity. And it's one thing to really find a way, like a point of rest inside who we are and how we are. But there's something really uniquely special about being able to locate our light in conversation with other lights in a broader picture, one that changes, one that guides, one that gives us, a broader orientation about how we want to be, and reminds us that for all of the time we spend maybe at distances, especially during something like, a global pandemic, for all those distances, we're not alone. I think there's something really, really special about that. And there's a quality about, or a quality of, bringing our own sort of unique shine, and sharing and celebrating that in other people. The quality of luminousness, even though we maybe shine in different ways and across broad distances. It's something really magical. And that can be a conversation, it can be creative, direct action, it can be conflict, right? And I think, as we're sort of creating these broader images, and imagining the world that we want, or orienting ourselves in different ways, they're not like perfectly rendered images or guides. It doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. And it gives us a lot of room and a lot of grace to show up as we are and to find ourselves connected to other people. I'd be remiss in my response if I didn't say that you can't harmonize on your own. I mean, some people do some incredibly cool things, where you can, hum and sing and, resonate all at once. But as you know, every song for me is a sing-along song. And there's sort of a downshift into belonging that happens when we decide that we don't have to be, the best at what we do to do it together. And I think singing is such a great space where that is made possible. We can't sing and be afraid at the same time. So that's one of the things that we can do together that we can't do alone. That has been a transformative practice in my life and in our wider world, I think. My work is toward liberatory futures, fully free futures, all of us all the way free. And that's as specific as abolition in our lifetime, right? As the renouncement, the walk away from carceral infrastructures and ideologies. Our futures are harmonious. They center curiosity, creative collaboration. Futures are challenging in new ways. They ask us to belong ourselves to something broader than our intellect or our capacity to create boundary and barrier. Our futures are reconciliatory, where we're able to acknowledge and be accountable for the harms that have created and caused the separations that we experience in the world, and using that as a point of departure. The futures that I imagine weave us back together. The futures that I imagine don't ask whether or not we can salvage the institutions that we have. They prioritize the care that we are owed. And they center young people and queer people and Black and brown people and disabled people, all of the ones who have all of the skills to lead us fully into the future that we all deserve, because they know the limiting beliefs that we've all been trapped inside for, as long as we've been harming each other and then pretending it never happened and then forgetting that we're pretending. The leadership that is the most marginalized in the future that I am building with my work and the collaborations that I prioritize is one where that leadership is the leadership. And those futures don't take themselves too seriously. Also, I think one of the most important pieces of building towards all of that is acknowledging that as soon as we try to control outcomes, we have an agenda, and that takes all of our strategies and all of their intentions and makes them turns sideways. And so as important as the high dream that we have, the long vision that we have for the world that we want, we have to prioritize practicing in the present, right? And dedicating the fullness of our imaginations to the present moment, also to the quality of connections that we have with one another, right? The future that I know is possible starts with like being fully available to one another, however imperfect, in the here and the now, which is only counterintuitive as long as we're stuck inside the infrastructures that are trying to make all of our outcomes quantifiable, profitable, and oriented around power over or power under instead of power throughout. Yeah. Future that I imagine in my work is cute as hell. Sometimes I feel like I risk being misunderstood because the futures that I prioritize or want to feed with my work are relentlessly optimistic and joyful, endlessly playful and curious. And also that is a deliberate tactic and strategy. It is informed in outcomes, which is the most profoundly powerful tool that I have. So I don't have it twisted. I'm not naive in the realities of the challenges that we are, set against. I just happen to know that, in the words of many, many teachers over many generations, that joy is a revolutionary force. So I bring that, levity and buoyancy to everything that we do. I love this question. The real question is, what role can't art play in movement work? It is not it's not an accessory. It's not the icing, right? The art is the work. I think about how so often in our world, the folks that have access to making art every day, all the time, are folks who are willing to forego a lot of the time their basic necessities and essential components of life just to be able to do that because we can't say no, or people who have so much insulation from the realities of harm or violence or access to resource that they can without having to think about it, right? And the reality is that, and I say that I like run the risk of being a broken record, but creativity is our birthright. It's always been. It's only in very recent history that we have commodified that we've outsourced it, that we've made a handful of people responsible to the point of like deep distress, actually, imposter syndrome and fear, self-deprecation, to make art for all of us. And we long so deeply to access it. Like how many of us can name a song or a piece of art or a movie that's changed our lives that we constantly go back to reconnect with ourselves. But somehow we've become so separated and divorced from our own capacity to do that because somebody told you to mouth it in choir in 3rd grade, or because you didn't have access to the tools or the resources, right? And as we, as more becomes available to us in this bizarre digital age, I hope that what comes with it is the reality that we deserve to create together with and for each other, because our world is just suffering from a lethal lack of imagination. We can't see how we belong to each other, right? All that we can see are these institutions. And even in our organizing work, so much of our priority is spent banging our heads against the walls of those institutions instead of opting out and availing ourselves to possibility. And that's what art brings us, is what is yet to be known. And that's where the future that we want is. And also inside what is yet to be known are all the potentials of all of the people that we would otherwise say, oh, well, you've harmed me, or you're not redeemable, or you don't belong. All of us belong. And so I think art gives us strategies to reconcile and to find our ways back to each other through unconscionable transgressions, right? Yeah, I don't think that there's anything that art can't do. It affords us the kind of space to be with what is that we can't afford ourselves when we're intellectualizing or problematizing people or situations. It gives us a somatic capacity to listen deeply and to be curious with one another. We can physically, literally superimpose over things like, police stations and city halls and, what ought be there instead. How can we imagine a world without police unless we design that world and overlay it and believe it into our work until it's real, right? So many of the things that we're clinging to are very they're not permanent ideas. They're not new ideas. Most of them are really recent, and most of them are pretty bad. And the thing that we do have that we've held on to for time immemorial is each other and our art making. You don't need a lot to create it, right? We can stand next to each other and sing the same song, and that diffuses fear, and it creates a sense of unity that will make someone with every imaginable tool and weapon stand down. When we apply creativity inside direct action, inside mutual aid, the best of us is, of humanity, the best of who we are and how we are is inherently creative, is inherently artful. I don't think that there isn't a way forward in organizing. I don't think that there's a way forward inside social justice practice and praxis without art and creativity as the center of that work. Okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to walk things back. What I mean is, maybe that's selfish of me to say is like art as something that we need to reprioritize in our capacity to imagine the world better, because it's the thing that's been lacking. And there's a place for everyone and a place for everything. And I guess if we could imagine, instead of a input-output, or like drop this in and try this on, instead an ecology, instead a network. The principles that we orient around in organizing are like mycelial in their nature. They're a network, right? The thought of freedom and the thought of justice and the thought of equity and dignity, accessibility, beauty, those things exist everywhere, on demand, without apology. So we're all tapped into that, whether or not we can really feel it. It's there. All of us have a different role to play inside the ecosystem of how we render those connections and those ideas, which belong to all of us, which are inherent in every natural space. So art is an essential part of the ecology of shift and world building that I'm really excited about. I would like to see more of it. So I would be delighted if that took more of a center stage. And I don't mean to diminish those other elements that are absolutely essential. There's a lot of unsexy work that needs to happen to build the world that we want, and I'm profoundly grateful for it. But I think we could probably make organizing a little more sexy with our creative capacities. We really deserve that.